Horizon, Episode 5. The Other Side of Exploration. Part 1. The Supply Run. People tend to imagine exploration as a glamorous profession. They picture strange worlds beneath alien suns, ancient ruins hidden beneath deserts, uncharted nebulae, first contact with civilizations that have never seen a starship. They picture people like Commander Amelia Carter. They rarely picture people like me. My name is Angus MacRae, captain of the Caledonia, a Union Galactic supply vessel. And for the past 26 years, I have been transporting the things other people need to survive while they are busy doing something more interesting. Food, fuel, medical supplies, replacement parts, communications equipment. Occasionally, something that nobody has bothered to explain to me. And apparently, I am now responsible for keeping the most ambitious exploration mission in the history of the Galactic Union, supplied while it travels through regions of space where the maps become increasingly optimistic. The ship in question is the UGS Horizon. You may have heard of her. If you haven't, I assume you have been living under a rock, which is probably safer than living aboard the Caledonia. The Horizon had been away from Union space for more than a year. That presented a logistical problem. Exploration ships require supplies, a surprisingly large amount of them. People occasionally forget that explorers still eat. They also drink water, consume oxygen, require medical treatment, replace clothing, break equipment, lose tools, destroy perfectly good coffee machines, and, in the case of engineers, occasionally dismantle something that was working perfectly well simply because they wanted to know why it was working. The Horizon carried substantial reserves, but reserves were never designed to last indefinitely. So the Union established a supply corridor. It wasn't really a corridor. There was no route marked on any official map. There were only a series of calculated rendezvous points, updated navigation data, communications relays, and a rather optimistic assumption that the ship we were supposed to meet would still be where our computers predicted it would be. That last part was particularly important because the Horizon was exploring. Explorers, by their nature, have an unfortunate habit of changing their minds. The Caledonia, on the other hand, was a cargo ship. Cargo ships like certainty. Cargo ships like schedules. Cargo ships like knowing where they are going before they leave. The Caledonia had none of those things. She was an old ship. Not dangerously old. There is an important distinction. Dangerously old ships are usually retired. The Caledonia had simply reached the age at which retirement had become an ongoing administrative discussion. She had been built almost 60 years earlier, originally as a medium-range logistics vessel. Since then, she had been rebuilt, modified, upgraded, partially dismantled, reassembled and modified again. Some of her systems were Union standard. Some were human. A few were Valerie. One navigation subsystem had been manufactured by the Arctron Cooperative and had been installed during a repair stop 30 years earlier. Nobody knew exactly why it was still working. Nobody wanted to find out. And then there was me. I had accepted command of the Caledonia for a very simple reason. Nobody else wanted the assignment. Their horizon was too far out. Their supply route was too uncertain. The communication windows were inconvenient. Their journey was long. The compensation was respectable, but not enough to make a sensible captain abandon a perfectly good route through civilized space. I am not, by nature, a sensible captain. So I accepted. My crew consisted of 5 people. 6 if you counted the cat. We didn't count the cat. The Union medical database classified him as cargo. He disagreed. My second in command was Talia Venn, a young Valerie engineer who had somehow acquired the dangerous human habit of improvisation. This was unfortunate. Valerie engineering traditionally emphasizes precision, redundancy, and carefully modeled solutions. Human engineering, in contrast, has a philosophical principle that can be summarized as, if it works, don't ask why. Talia had somehow combined both approaches. She could calculate the exact operating parameters of a reactor down to the smallest tolerance. And when the reactor inevitably ignored those calculations, she could hit it with a tool. She insisted the second part was not technically engineering. I disagreed. Our pilot was Evan Cole, human 29 years old, competent, and possessed of the irritating confidence of someone who had never yet experienced a sufficiently serious accident. Our navigator and communications officer was Nayak Thal, a Zeran. Nayak was methodical, very methodical. He maintained navigation records with almost religious dedication. He also maintained copies of every flight plan we had ever filed. This was admirable. It was also completely useless, because I had violated most of them. And then there was our cook, Milo Ortega. Milo had spent years on the outer defensive front. Officially, he was our cook. Unofficially, he was also the only person aboard who could keep someone alive long enough to reach a medical facility after something had gone horribly wrong. He had combat medical training. He had seen more injuries than any of us. He had also developed an unusual philosophy about food. According to Milo, if the crew was complaining about the meal, that meant they were alive enough to complain. I found the philosophy reassuring. On the morning we departed, the cargo manifest contained 387 individual entries. I had signed 11 of them. Talia had signed 42. Nayak had signed the remaining 334. He was very proud of this. I was not. We were carrying enough food for several months. Industrial replicator feedstock, fuel cells, replacement reactor components, medical supplies, atmospheric filters, spare sensor modules, and a series of communications satellites. The satellites were particularly important. Their horizon was going farther out. Much farther. At those distances, communications became less a matter of sending a message and more a matter of leaving a trail of breadcrumbs across the galaxy and hoping nobody ate them. The new satellites would extend the Union's communication network behind the horizon. They would also provide navigational references. And if everything went according to plan, they would allow the horizon to remain in contact with Union space. If everything went according to plan. I have always disliked that phrase. It implies that plans have some sort of authority over reality. Reality has never shown much respect for paperwork. We departed at 6:40. At 6:47, Nayak informed me that our departure authorization had not been properly filed. I told him it had been filed. He informed me that it had not. I asked him how he knew. He showed me the form. There was no signature. I asked him whose signature was missing. He said mine. I asked him why he hadn't simply signed it himself. There was a long silence. Then he said, "Because that would be fraudulent." I told him that I appreciated his principles. He replied that he appreciated them too. We departed anyway. Talia was standing beside the engineering console when the ship entered FTL. She looked at the status display. Then she looked at me. Captain, yes, we have a problem. I sighed. We've been in space for 7 minutes. I know. That's a new record. She didn't smile. That was how I knew it was serious. The secondary coolant regulator is reporting an unstable pressure differential. I looked toward the engineering display. How unstable? Talia considered the question. Then she said, enough that I would prefer not to be here when it becomes more unstable. I nodded. Can you fix it? Yes. Good. I'll need 6 hours. How long do we have? She looked at the navigation display. Approximately 5 hours and 40 minutes before the next course correction. I stared at her. She stared at me. Somewhere behind us, Milo shouted that breakfast was ready. I looked at Talia again. Can we fix it before breakfast? She thought about it. No. Then we'll have breakfast first. She sighed. And that was how our journey to resupply the most important exploration vessel in the Galactic Union began. With an unsigned departure authorization, an unreliable coolant regulator, and a captain who had already decided that breakfast was more important than both. At the time, I thought those would be the biggest problems we encountered. I was wrong. Very wrong. Because 12 hours later, we received our first updated transmission from the horizon. And it contained a new set of coordinates. The problem was that those coordinates were not anywhere near the place where we were supposed to meet them. Part 2, the new coordinates. There are 2 things I consider essential for maintaining good health during a long voyage. Coffee and Scotch. This is not a personal preference. It is medical advice. At least, that is what I tell people. Milo Ortega disagrees. Strongly. He has informed me on several occasions that no medical authority in the Galactic Union has ever recommended Scotch as part of a balanced diet. I have pointed out that he is a cook, not a physician. He reminds me that he spent 4 years working as a combat medic. I remind him that he now cooks for a living. This discussion has never reached a satisfactory conclusion. That morning, however, the subject was temporarily forgotten. Because we had a problem. The coordinates from the horizon were wrong. Not slightly wrong. Not perhaps our navigational computer needs recalibration wrong. They were wrong by almost 14 million kilometers. Nayak displayed the 2 positions on the navigation screen. The original rendezvous point was marked in blue. The new coordinates appeared in red. The red marker was nowhere near the blue one. I looked at the screen, then at Nayak. Explain. Nayak adjusted his glasses. The horizon has changed course. I can see that. They changed course approximately 9 hours ago. Why? I don't know. Did they tell us? No. Did anyone tell them that we were coming? Yes. Did they acknowledge? Yes. And then they moved. Correct. I stared at the display. Why do explorers do this? Nayak looked genuinely puzzled. Explore. Without consideration for the people bringing them things. He considered that. Perhaps that is the point. I didn't like the answer. Talia entered the bridge, carrying a diagnostic tablet. How bad? I pointed at the coordinates. She looked at them. That's inconvenient. Inconvenient. Would you prefer catastrophic? Not particularly. Then inconvenient. She sat beside Nayak and examined the new route. We can reach them. I smiled. Excellent. Talia continued. We'll need to modify the flight plan. Naturally. And reduce our reserve fuel. My smile disappeared. How much? About 18%. That's not a modification. She looked at me. What would you call it? A bad idea. Then yes. Nayak cleared his throat. There is another issue. I closed my eyes. There is a particular moment during a voyage when you realize that every time someone says another issue, they are really saying the situation is getting worse. I opened my eyes. What? The new coordinates require us to cross the Kestrel Drift. Nobody spoke. Even Evan, who had been half asleep in the pilot's chair, suddenly looked awake. The Kestrel Drift wasn't dangerous in the conventional sense. There were no pirates, no hostile fleets, no known devourer activity. It was simply a region of space containing unstable plasma streams, fragmented gravitational fields, and enough electromagnetic interference to make navigation systems question their life choices. The Union had officially classified it as a restricted navigation zone, which was bureaucratic language for, you probably shouldn't go there. I looked at Nayak. How long would it take to go around? 31 hours. Through. 8. I looked at Talia. She looked at me. Then she looked at the navigation display. Captain, I know. Do you? I've been doing this for 26 years. That doesn't answer the question. It answers enough of it. Milo appeared on the bridge doorway. He was holding a tray. Breakfast. Nobody moved. He looked around. Why is everyone staring at the navigation display? Nayak answered. We've been instructed to cross the Kestrel Drift. Milo lowered the tray. No. I looked at him. You haven't even heard the whole plan. I heard Kestrel Drift. You are the cook. Exactly. I have survived enough bad decisions to recognize one early. He placed the tray on the nearest console. Then he pointed at me. And you're not having Scotch. It is 8 in the morning. Exactly. That's why I'm having coffee. Milo nodded. Good. I reached for the coffee. He moved the cup away. Not yet. I stared at him. What? You haven't eaten. I have coffee. Coffee isn't food. Depends on the planet. It doesn't. I looked at Talia. She was trying very hard not to laugh. Whose side are you on? Engineering. That's not a side. It is on this ship. I took the cup. Milo let me have it. Then he pointed at the tray. 8. I did. Mostly because the last person who had ignored Milo's instructions had been me, and the resulting argument had lasted 3 days. While we ate, Nayak continued analyzing the route. The Kestrel Drift wasn't uniformly unstable. There were narrow regions where the electromagnetic turbulence dropped significantly. Those regions were predictable. Unfortunately, they moved. We would have to navigate between them. That meant no autopilot, no automatic FTL correction, no relying entirely on the ship's navigation computer. In other words, we needed Nayak. Nayak seemed pleased by this. He was the only person aboard who could become genuinely enthusiastic about a difficult navigation problem. He brought up a 3-dimensional projection of the drift. Here, a series of moving bands appeared. The plasma streams are shifting at approximately 600 kilometers per second. Evan whistled. And we're supposed to fly through that. Nayak nodded. Yes. How confident are you? 73%. I looked at him. Only 73. That's very high. For you. For anyone. I wasn't convinced. Talia leaned closer to the display. Could we use the cargo field generators? Nayak looked at her. For navigation. For stability. He thought about it. The cargo field generators were designed to compensate for small gravitational variations during transport. They weren't intended for this, which meant, naturally, that Talia had already decided to use them. Possibly, she said. I sighed. How many systems on this ship are you currently modifying? She counted silently. 5. Only 5. 7, if you include the ones I haven't told you about. I took another sip of coffee. Carry on. That was when the ship shook. Not violently. Just enough to make the coffee in my cup move. Everyone looked toward the ceiling. Talia checked her tablet. What was that? Nayak was already checking the sensors. Minor plasma interaction. Minor. Yes. The ship shook again. This time harder. Milo caught the edge of the doorway. I caught my coffee. The cat did neither. He had appeared from somewhere beneath the navigation console and was now sitting calmly on the floor, staring at all of us with the expression of someone who had long ago accepted that humans were fundamentally incompetent. We still didn't know his name. We had tried naming him. He ignored every suggestion. The cat had first appeared aboard the Caledonia 8 months after I took command. We discovered him during a maintenance inspection. He had been hiding inside a storage compartment. Nobody knew how he had boarded the ship. Nobody knew where he had come from. We searched the cargo manifests. Nothing. We checked the station's security recordings. Nothing. We contacted the previous crew. Nothing. The sensible thing would have been to return him. We never found anyone willing to claim him. So he stayed. He belonged to nobody, which, in my experience, was probably why he was the happiest member of the crew. He had gradually acquired access to most areas of the ship. Nobody had given him that access. He simply behaved as though he owned it. And nobody had yet found a convincing argument to the contrary. Talia looked down at him. You know, he probably shouldn't be on the bridge. The cat looked up at her, then walked across the bridge and sat in my chair. Nobody spoke. I pointed at him. See? Milo smiled. He's your relief, Captain. I refuse. The cat closed his eyes. Nayak looked at the navigation display. Captain. Yes. We're entering the drift. I looked through the forward viewport. There was no visible boundary. No warning sign. No dramatic change in the stars. Just darkness. Somewhere ahead, invisible waves of plasma and distorted gravity were moving through space. Behind us was the safe route. Ahead was the faster route. And somewhere beyond it was the horizon. A ship carrying scientists, historians, engineers, doctors, and explorers who were busy discovering things nobody had discovered before. They were doing the glamorous part. We were carrying their groceries. I finished my coffee. All right. I stood. Let's go deliver some supplies. Milo raised an eyebrow. That sounds almost optimistic. Don't worry. I looked at the cat, occupying my chair. I'll have a Scotch later. Milo shook his head. Medical advice? Absolutely. From whom? I smiled. An excellent doctor. Name? I thought about it. Dr. MacRae. Milo sighed. That's not how medicine works. I walked toward the pilot's station. Behind me, Talia began rerouting the cargo field generators. Nayak started calculating the first passage through the drift. Evan brought the engines to maneuvering power, and the Caledonia entered the Kestrel Drift. We had no idea yet that the horizon's change of course had nothing to do with us. And we certainly didn't know why, several hours later, the horizon would send us another message. This one would contain only 3 words. Do not follow us. Part 3, do not follow us. The message from the horizon arrived 3 hours after we entered the Kestrel Drift. Do not follow us. 3 words. No explanation. No coordinates. No polite request. Just 3 words. I read them twice. Then I looked at Nayak. Is that really from the horizon? He checked the transmission signature. Authentic. Could it be corrupted? No. Hacked. Unlikely. Miscommunication. Possible. I looked at Talia. She was already shaking her head. Don't. I haven't said anything. You were going to suggest we follow them anyway. I was considering it. That's why I said don't. I leaned back in my chair. There are moments when a captain has to make a difficult decision. This was not one of them. The message was clear. We were not to follow the horizon. The problem was that our entire mission consisted of following the horizon. We had 6 months of supplies aboard. We had spent almost 2 weeks getting this far, and we were currently flying through a region of space that the Union had specifically recommended avoiding. I looked at Nayak. Can we contact them? We can try. He opened a communications channel. Static filled the bridge. Then nothing. He tried again. Nothing. The drift is interfering with the signal. Can we get through? Not from here. Can we move? Yes. To where? Nayak pointed toward the navigation display. The nearest stable communications zone is approximately 200,000 kilometers away. I looked at Talia. Can the ship handle that? She hesitated. That was never a good sign. Probably. That's not an engineering answer. It's the honest one. I considered that. Fair enough. We changed course. The Caledonia moved slowly through the unstable region. For once, nobody complained. Not even Milo. He was sitting behind us, cleaning a medical kit. I looked at him. Why are you carrying that? He didn't look up. Because we're in the Kestrel Drift. That's not an answer. It is if you've ever been here. I decided not to argue. The cat appeared from under the navigation console. He walked across the bridge, jumped onto the empty auxiliary chair, and curled up. Talia glanced at him. Does he ever get nervous? No. Why not? I shrugged. He's a cat. The cat opened one eye. For a moment, I had the distinct impression that he was judging us. Then he went back to sleep. 2 hours later, we reached the communications zone. Nayak immediately began transmitting. This time, the the signal went through. A voice answered. Not Amelia Carter. Not Lyra. Not anyone I recognized. Caledonia, identify. I frowned. This is Captain Angus MacRae, UGS Caledonia. We're carrying Horizon resupply. A pause. Then, Captain MacRae, you need to stop. Where? Where you are. I looked at Nayak. He was listening carefully. Why? Another pause. We have detected an unstable gravitational structure ahead of your position. How unstable? We don't know. That's reassuring. The voice ignored me. Do not attempt to reach the horizon. I leaned toward the communications console. Why? This time, the silence lasted longer. Then the answer came. Because we're not where you think we are. The transmission ended. Nobody spoke. Evan finally broke the silence. I don't like that. Neither do I. Talia looked at the navigation display. Captain. What? Their transmission originated from the coordinates they sent us. I stared at her. That makes no sense. No. Nayak began running calculations. The signal could have been reflected. By what? He didn't answer. That was when we received another transmission. This one wasn't from the horizon. It was an automated navigation beacon. Old. Very old. Nayak decoded it. His expression changed. What? He looked at me. The beacon isn't Union. Guardian. No. Then what? He turned the display toward me. The identification system showed a designation none of us recognized. Not a language. Not a known civilization. Just a sequence of symbols. Talia leaned closer. How old? Nayak checked the signal characteristics. At least several thousand years. Milo stopped cleaning the medical kit. I looked through the forward viewport. There was nothing there. Only stars. A completely ordinary field of stars. And somewhere inside it, an ancient beacon was transmitting a message that nobody aboard the Caledonia could understand. I stood. Can we avoid it? Nayak looked at the navigation map. Yes. Good. I sat down again. We avoid it. Talia raised an eyebrow. That's it. That's it. She smiled slightly. You're becoming cautious. Don't spread that around. We turned away from the beacon. For approximately 11 minutes, everything went perfectly. Then the engines shut down. All of them. The bridge went silent. The stars stopped moving. The Caledonia was drifting. I looked at Talia. She was already running diagnostics. What happened? I don't know. Can you restart them? Not yet. Nayak looked at the navigation display. We're drifting toward the anomaly. I closed my eyes. Of course we were. Milo stood up. Captain. Yes. I think we're going to need the Scotch. I opened my eyes. Finally. Someone understands medicine. Milo sighed. I meant for me. The cat walked across the bridge and sat beside my chair. He looked at the dead engine indicators. Then at me. I swear he was smiling. That was when Talia shouted, "Engines are coming back." The ship jolted forward. The navigation display flickered. And suddenly, for less than a second, something appeared on our sensors. A massive structure. Not a ship. Not a station. Something much larger. Then it disappeared. Nayak stared at the screen. I recorded it. Good. Captain. What? It was between us and the horizon. I looked at the last known coordinates of our destination. Then at the strange ancient beacon. Then at the empty space ahead. For the first time since leaving Union space, I stopped thinking about the cargo. I started wondering what, exactly, the horizon had found, and why they were so determined that we should stay away.